Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, police are growing increasingly frustrated over the shortage of blood-drawing tubes. This, of course, as statistics around drunk driving spike over the festive season. We understand that about 2,000 drivers have already been arrested on South African roads because of drunk driving. Let's go to our senior reporter, Dasen Thathiah, now for more information on the story. Dasen, just tell me, how have police explained that there's a shortage of this equipment?
Well, Maseko, let me start with the context around this. So I've been talking to a number of police officers and other emergency services workers that have been on the ground. You know, this is a particularly busy period for them. And one of the frustrations has been around the shortage of these blood alcohol testing kits, particularly the vials that are found within them. And as a result of that, it means that now the available means to test for alcohol or for drunken driving is a little bit more limited. It's not that it can't happen, it can still happen, but except now those vials which are used as part of those kits are not available because of a global shortage. So it's become difficult. Some of the accounts that I've heard, Maseko, unfortunately, you know, these police officers can't speak to us on camera, but some of the accounts that I've heard of seeing visibly drunk people, in some cases other police officers as well, that have been driving vehicles during this time, and they feel like their hands are tied to a certain extent. I remember one police officer saying to me what he'll now have to do is just give a statement. So he'd have to give a visual account or a description of what he saw of another police officer that was driving a vehicle at the time, who he believed was drunk. So these are some of the complications that they are facing. So what it's also done is that it's created a bit of frustration, not just with police officers, but others that are against drunken driving. I believe all of us should be, but there are organizations that are dedicated to this, like South Africans Against Drunk Driving. Carol Smith, I had a conversation with her. You remember that she founded that organization because she lost her son in a drunk driving incident many years ago. And she was saying that in general, she believes that the SAPS needs to take this crime a lot more seriously because of the implications of it. So at the moment, she feels it's not being policed enough. Let's listen to a part of an interview that I did with her recently.
We were very disappointed to hear that there was a shortage of blood alcohol kits in other parts of the country. The Western Cape actually has no shortage at all. The Western Cape have blood alcohol kits available until April next year. But the SAPS don't have them in the rest of the country. But you know, we know that SAPS do not take drunk driving seriously. They often say, but we've got more serious crimes to deal with. We've got crimes like murder to deal with. We've got crimes like house arrest, gender-based violence, all sorts of other things. And so they often do not test drunk drivers or drink drivers at crash scenes.
And of course, the Automobile Association of South Africa, I understand, Dasen, also raising concern.
Definitely, and I think there's good reason for these concerns, Maseko. If you were to just look at last year's stats, for example, of the drivers that were arrested on our roads, about a quarter of them were arrested for drunken driving. And with the latest stats that we're seeing, it seems like there is really no change. This is always the case. You also have a high number of accidents during this time. And I think I must stress the point that it's not just during the festive season that drunken driving becomes a problem, but I think people tend to pay more attention to it during this time because we have more updated statistics. We have a festive season wrap of sorts where we get all of these numbers thrown at us and very little change. And the Automobile Association is saying, is basically echoing Carol Smith's sentiments there, saying that this is a huge problem. And I think one must remember that while the breathalyzer is still available, while there is, as I said, you know, the account of the police officers that may come across drunk drivers, while those elements are still available to them to aid with prosecutions, ultimately it is blood that is required to strengthen those cases, because it can't be disputed. And it can't just be thrown into any vial or any bottle that you find. It has to be in these specific ones that are linked to cases or have serial numbers on them that need to be used. The Automobile Association says that already the prosecutions are very low. Let's listen to what Leighton Beard had to say to us.
From our point of view, this is obviously very worrying and very concerning, and it sends such a poor message from the authorities to the public of South Africa about their commitment to road safety in South Africa. One of the big problems we have on our roads is obviously drunk driving. Yet we see that only 8% of people who are stopped for drunk driving are actually prosecuted for drunk driving, and that in itself tells you a story. Now, when you are moving towards the end of the year and the festive period is upon you, there is a huge intensification of traffic law enforcement throughout the country, specifically in your province. And one would imagine that part of that intensification and part of that planning would be to say, well, we will have to make sure that we've got all the necessary equipment to ensure that if we stop people, we can test them properly for drunkenness or intoxicated, or if they're being intoxicated, to ensure we take those people off the road. Now you're not in a position to do that, and there is no way legally that you are able to say to somebody, well, I think you're drunk, you can't drive any further. So that becomes a huge issue.
And what did the SAPS have to say exactly, Dasen? This puts their jobs in jeopardy.
I would think so, because, as I said, this is such an important tool, or such an important part of the process of prosecuting drunk drivers. Now, this had been a problem for at least a few months during this year. And previously, the SAPS had said that it had hoped that it would get these kits at least by November. That would have been ahead of the festive season, and it would have assisted with the operations that they are currently busy with. But that was not meant to be, and even now, most parts of the country still don't have those kits. And SAPS is saying that despite them not being able to source the original ones that they use, there is a second type that is currently being tested. Unfortunately, they're not able to tell us when those will be ready for use. Remember, these have to be tested quite vigorously. They have to have an assurance, really, that it will stand up in court, because that's really what it comes down to. I did put these questions to the SAPS. Let's listen to what Brigadier Dasen Thathiah had to say to me.
There is a shortage and depletion of the alcohol blood test kits in the country due to the fact that the manufacturer of the vials, which is a component which is utilized in the alcohol blood test kits, alerted us that there is a shortage globally of the vials. Now, the vials is a tube which contains chemicals that ensure that the blood that is drawn from the suspect in drunken driving cases maintains the same alcohol levels until it is analyzed by the National Health Laboratory Service. Now, we can confirm that at this point in time, there is a new vial that has been brought into the country, and it was not previously tested. We can confirm that the SAPS and the National Health Laboratory Service is in the process of testing and validating this new vials to ensure that it complies to the SAPS's specifications.
All right, senior reporter Dasen Thathiah live for us in Durban. Let's leave it there for now.